In the United States, the President commands the military, but Congress authorizes its use and existence, and the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, is the law that does it. The NDAA provides congressional authorization for the Department of Defense and nuclear programs under the Department of Energy. Contrary to popular misconception, the NDAA does not actually fund any part of the DoD, but it does define what the DoD is allowed to do and sets guidelines for what they can buy, sell, or transport. For example, the NDAA authorizes the overall end strength of the U.S. military, or the number of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines each branch is allowed to have. And it authorizes what those services can spend money on. If the Air Force wants to buy a new aircraft to replace an older model, Congress uses the NDAA to say how many planes they can buy and how many they can get rid of. Funding the Department of Defense is accomplished through a different process, called appropriations, in which Congress earmarks money for the DoD's operational structure and activities. Since the 1970s, the NDAA has become what many deem must-pass legislation, ensuring uninterrupted protection for the nation. And because it is among the only legislation guaranteed to pass each year, many other non-defense initiatives are attached to what should be an exclusively defense and nuclear bill. Some refer to this as the NDAA Christmas tree, hanging items on a bill to provide gifts from members of Congress and their districts, although it's also an example of Congress explicitly authorizing agency actions, instead of abdicating its oversight responsibilities as it often does with other executive branch agencies. The annual process of constructing and passing the bill is often referred to as the NDAA cycle. Each year, the two committees of jurisdiction, the House Armed Services Committee, or HASC, and the Senate Armed Services Committee, or SASC, build separate versions of the bill, driven by their committee chair and its members. The cycle starts in January as individual offices compile lists for what they want to see in the bill. Representatives and senators with a base in their district or a defense manufacturer in their state list out their priorities. These are distilled in subcommittees of the HASC and SASC to form a final version that the committee releases in spring, called the Chairman's Mark, or just the Mark. In the summer, these two bills are voted out of their respective committees and sent to the floor, where representatives and senators who are not on HASC or SASC have their first opportunity to submit amendments to the bill. Each chamber will spend a week debating amendments and eventually voting on the bill right before recess in August. In theory, this provides members time to go back to their districts and states and hear complaints or comments on the bill. As members reconvene in the fall, a conference is formed of senators and representatives from HASC and SASC to reconcile differences between the two versions. The final version is released for a final round of amendments and votes, ending with NDAA passage just before Christmas. For 70 years, Congress has passed an NDAA every year, making it one of the only pieces of legislation that routinely passes with bipartisan support. In an era where Congress usually abdicates its budget-setting responsibilities, the NDAA is a rare example of accepting them. What do you think of the NDAA cycle? What can be learned from this must-pass legislation? Should Congress be doing more like this or less? Let us know in the comments below.